Hi, everybody, and welcome. It's another very special episode of the Baton, a John Williams musical journey. So it's February 2021. Happy New Year. If I haven't seen you since then, the new year came around, and we're celebrating the maestro's 89th birthday. And by we, I mean some of my co hosts from the podcast. And let's go ahead and welcome them all here right now. Hello, gentlemen. How are you doing? Good to see you. So let's do the introductions here, and I'll just kind of do this in the order that I see you on my screen. So on my top left, we have Colin Stokes. Colin was joining me for the Far and Away episode, one of my favorite ones that we did. Next is Brian Martell, who is a four-timer on the Baton. He did the Iger Sanction, he did JFK, Amistad, and Indiana Jones and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, as well as a special guest appearance on Star Wars. Next up, we have Eduardo Victoria, who was very good with his War of the Worlds episode. And going next down the row, we have Victor Joss, who was very good for Warhorse, one of my favorite scores where I really kind of appreciated it after Victor contributed his stuff. Sadiq Hussain is next, and Sadiq contributed to the Black Sunday episode and the Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. And next we have Andrew Ledford, and Andrew was here for Revenge of the Sith. Helped me appreciate that score just a teeny bit more. Felix Moller was The Adventures of Tintin, very good episode. Jim Nova was part of one of my absolute favorite episodes, probably the best one, my favorite for my favorite score, The Empire Strikes Back. Eric Woods was here for Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom, one of probably the world's foremost Indiana Jones fans. Richard Fish came to me for Saving Private Ryan. Had a great story to tell about actually performing Hymn to the Fallen in Omaha Beach. So I recommend everybody go and find that episode. It's very moving, his story about that. And finally, we have David Kay, who is a three-timer. David was here for E.T., Jurassic Park, and The Book Thief. So gentlemen, it's great to have you all here for this wonderful celebration of John Williams' birthday. I cannot believe that this man is 89 years old. If you think about it, we're in February 2021. A year ago, he was in Austria conducting a symphony or a concert at 88 years old. I mean, I know some people who are 88 years old, and the thought of them standing in front of a group of musicians conducting a 2.5-hour concert for 2 days would just take the life out of him. And yet here he was doing it with smile on his face, everything. I mean, I just can't believe that he has that stamina. One of the things I do remember that I read about him is when he records a score, as he's trying to think about how he's going to, compose the music for a certain scene, if, it's not coming to him, he goes out for a walk. And I think he goes for like at least an hour walk every day. I think at one point, his team got him a treadmill because he was in, I think he was out in Tanglewood one year in the winter and it was too cold to take a walk. So they got him a treadmill. So he was in his little cottage and walking on the treadmill for an hour. So I think that really helps him. I think he knows he stays in shape. And I think many composers who are also conductors, I think they feel like they have to stay in shape. And I think maybe all of you who are musicians can probably attest to this. If you're not just a conductor, but if you're a musician, you have to be in good physical shape because it takes a lot of effort to perform. I mean, would you guys agree with that?
Oh, definitely.
It's really, it's kind of amazing to know that he's 89 years old. And of course, at this point, we don't know what his next score will be, if there is going to be a next score, but he's probably going to conduct it, or at least some or parts of it. And I am amazed at his ability to be able to continue working and to basically say that he's going to be like, he probably wants to go like Bernard Herrmann. He wants to be on a recording stage and his last breath is going to be working on a film score. And I don't think any of us would want it any other way. Of course, we want him to live for 1,000 years, but if he has to go, it's going to have to be, when he's working on a score and make that his legacy. So I'm pretty sure that on John Williams' birthday, all of you do something a little bit special. Everybody listens to a little bit of John Williams on his birthday. Everybody wants to wake up in the morning and say it's his birthday. Let's listen to my favorite piece. And that's all well and good, but I've been taking it up a notch myself for the past, I think it's been 25 years. And I wonder if any of you do a little bit extra to mark the birthday of this amazing man. So I'll tell you my story and then I'll let you guys share what you guys do. So every February, I do what's called the John Williams Film Festival. And it started in 1995. This was just a couple of years after I kind of discovered who John Williams was and the amazing work he has done. And I said, I've got to watch these films. I want to try to watch as many films as I could. And it was February 1st. And I said, I'm going to spend a whole week watching some John Williams films that I never have seen. And of course, at that time, I was very new to him. And I watched a lot of the new ones. And so in the 90s, it was rediscovering Home Alone. I had never watched Born on the 4th of July. I'd actually sat down and watched Born on the 4th of July. I was very moved by it. And some other films. And then I watched, of course, some of the big ones. And I remember I watched Jaws 2, which I had never seen. And I remember that year I said, now I see why he didn't want to do Jaws 3 and 4. It just kind of was starting to go downhill from there, and good decision by him. And then the year after that, I said, I'm going to streamline this. So every year since 1996, with the exception of the 2 years when I did this podcast, I have done 7 films over the course of about 4 or 5 days. So it's all the films in which he won an Oscar, which would be Fiddler on the Roof, Jaws, Star Wars, E.T., and Schindler's List, plus The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. So the last day is just a Star Wars day. So I do Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. And the other days, I kind of mix it up, kind of the way I feel or what time I have. Obviously, the longest one is Fiddler on the Roof. So that's kind of a almost just one film for that day. I usually don't try to do E.T. and Schindler's List on the same day because I get real emotional in both films. So I'm just a wreck after watching E.T. The final 15 minutes. And then if I were to, an hour later, 2 hours later, start watching Schindler's List, I'd just be emotionally drained and just couldn't move. So I try to have those on different days. So I've been doing that every year. And I'll tell you, this is kind of a laugh for some of you guys, especially for Andrew, who did Revenge of the Sith. When the prequel trilogy came out, I said, okay, I'll add the prequels into this. I'll add Phantom Menace, I'll add Attack of the Clones, and I'll add Revenge of the Sith and just add an extra day. And it kind of takes the mood down when I get to Revenge of the Sith and I'm pulling my hair out. It's like, oh, this music is just not that good. And the movie is like, oh, I can't take it. So I wiped out the prequel trilogy. So it stays with those 7 films. And I'm actually going to be doing that this year. After 2 years away, I can't wait to get back to it. Of course, I've been watching all these films as part of the podcast, but it's going to be great to get back to it. So if any of you willing to share any special things that you do to celebrate John Williams' birthday beyond just listening to his music, please share. Brian, go ahead.
Here's where I burst the bubble about the myth of Canadians being nice. So for most of my life, to be honest, I didn't do much for John Williams' birthday. I would ignore, oh, it's John Williams' birthday. Depending on the day of the week, I might, if I had a beer at night, toast him. It all changed in 2004 when, to celebrate Jerry Goldsmith's 75th birthday, Varice Sarabande released that wonderful box set, Jerry Goldsmith at 20th Century Fox, which was a great celebration of his music and a period, and it was a nice celebration for an event. So, of course, as a John Williams fan, I was going, wow, I can't wait to see what they do in 3 years when it's John Williams' 75th. And 3 years later, butt kiss. Nothing. So in typical fanboy rage, I was like indignant for the whole month after his birthday that how could they do this? I need to be more like John Williams, who really doesn't give a damn, probably, but and you understand there's rights and everything, but still, it's like, John Williams, you should do something. So every birthday since then, indignancy till he turned 80, and I figured at 80, they're going to do something because he's 80, and butt kiss. So in fanboy rage, I said, screw it, and I made my own celebration, John Williams at 80, and ate actually 9-disc set that celebrated John Williams. And now every year at his birthday, as I still have that fanboy indignation that nothing is done to celebrate probably the greatest film composer ever on his birthday, I listen to that all the time, and it helps me celebrate why I like John Williams. And so maybe one day they'll do something, but of course I'll have everything by then. But that's how I celebrate it. Glorious bitterness.
Oh boy, that is very un-Canadian.
That's a very Canadian rage. I'm so mad I'm going to listen to music.
Yeah.
And I made it myself, and it's perfect.
That'll show them. Well, I love that. And I did have a chance to do an 85th celebration because I live in the Boston area. So 4 years ago, Boston Pops did a whole season of John Williams film scores. And this was my favorite celebration of the maestro that I've done. It was a little more than I or my wife bargained for because I bought tickets for every performance. I was like, this is going to be great. They're going to cover the whole catalog. I didn't know, as I'm sure those of you who play in orchestras knows, it was the same program each time, slight variations here and there. So I brought my wife. We were all set up. It's going to be so amazing. And by like the third time we're hearing Towering Inferno and Heidi, she's kind of like, I think I got the gist. But it was worth it because, of course, he did come out for, I think, just one, maybe two of the performances for the second half or for an encore. And to see, first of all, anybody who's, it is so special to be in that room with him. The whole energy changes. And also to see this very, for me, surprisingly kind of stone-faced orchestra, which is, I would be just like geeking out the whole time, but they're very, very serious and they play everything very stone. But there was one like xylophonist who was doing the Imperial March riff frantically during the break because he was going to be ready, and his face during the Imperial March encore was really worth the price.
Yeah, I would imagine if I was in the orchestra and I was in the percussion session, I wouldn't be able to keep a straight face the whole time. I would just be like grinning from ear to ear because it's just an unbelievable opportunity.
I think all of us here have been to a concert featuring John Williams at one point. So it's pretty special. And I'll never forget my first time seeing him in concert. It was actually Boston Symphony Hall because I had gone there to Boston specifically to hear him. And any of you who've been there, there's like the orchestra pit, and then they have the I don't know what you would call those, the balcony seats. And they kind of go in a horseshoe around. And I was on I guess if you're facing the orchestra, I was on the right side of the balcony at the very front. So I wanted to get as close as I could. And I wanted to be able to be up top so I could really see a lot of the orchestra. And yeah, the energy in the room before he walked out was great, but then he walked out and really, I completely understand what a 13-year-old boy and girl are like when they see Taylor Swift. I mean, that's really what it was like for me, just to see this man walk out. It was amazing.
I mean, Jeff, do you remember that I was on stage for that concert that you saw in Boston?
You told me you were, and
Yeah.
That was amazing to know that. And it's kind of funny to think that while we were standing outside waiting for John Williams to come out and give his autograph, you may have just walked right by me, and I probably wouldn't have even known it.
That's
Jim, were
definitely what happened. Yeah.
Were you stone-faced, Jim, during the playing of the music?
Well, it's funny, Colin, when you said that, when you talked about that, I mean, a little peek behind that curtain is that, trust me, we are, all of us who are fortunate enough to play for him are giddy and beaming and such, but we also know that his music is so difficult and that we're kind of like getting in the zone to make sure that we're totally on top of everything, because his music, I mean, there isn't no easy section of his writing. His writing is always really, I mean, you talk to some of the string players and they say that, John Williams' music is as hard as any Richard Strauss tone poem or Mahler symphony or anything like that. And so, trust me, we are really excited, but it's not that we're bored or anything like that. Or that
Concentrating.
we're so focused because he is so focused when he's on the podium too. I mean, he doesn't miss anything. He's always right on top of everything. So even at his age, amazing.
Yeah,
is
I bet
amazing.
the brass section, like it has, I bet the brass requires a lot of energy as well, because especially his Williams scores from like the late 70s to 80s. I'm thinking specifically of Raiders and Return of the Jedi, all those triplets and the horns during like the action sequences. I bet that must be a really intense amount of energy to
Oh
pull
yeah.
that off.
Oh yeah, I mean, what's great is now you're starting to see excerpts from Superman and Raiders of the Lost Ark, show up on orchestral auditions. They're showing up as excerpts alongside Beethoven, Brahms, Mahler, that kind of thing. And I think it's absolutely valid. In my classes that I teach at Duquesne with my low brass kids, we're starting to work on them too. Because I said, look, you have a much more likely chance of playing these in a concert than you do playing some massive Mahler symphony. So let's learn this stuff now. And it's been, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's very challenging, very challenging.
Jim, to add on to what you said about he doesn't miss anything on the podium. A couple of years back, actually, I don't want to think about the fact that it was 10 years ago now, but I was able to crash. I won't go into how I did it, but I was able to crash one of his rehearsals at the Hollywood Bowl.
Nice.
And I was sitting with the LA, like I just, made a friendly with a pianist, and she finally was like, "Oh, here, sit next to me in the orchestra." Yeah, that was one of those like I can't believe this is happening moments. But they were going on to the asteroid field, the concert arrangement of the asteroid field, right? And it just begins with that very low, I believe it's just basses and chili, bum 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 bum. And so the group comes in and he cuts off the band immediately, and he points to the pianist and he goes, "Look at your part closely, please." And they start over. Same thing happens, and he cuts off the group and he says, "I believe she has the incorrect part. Could somebody take care of this, please?" And of course, like a flood of librarians just descend on the part to get the correct one. But just no more than like a bar of her playing, and he just immediately knew that she had the wrong part. So while the librarians were trying to get that sorted out, of course, the orchestra has to move on. So he rehearsed the whole thing, and finally, when the piece was over, somebody comes and hands her the correct part, and she's looking at it, and she goes, "Guess I'll just read it at the concert tonight." She puts it down, moves on to the next thing.
That's amazing how they do that. Amazing. Before we move on, I want to say hi to Chris Hatt. Chris joined us in the middle of all of this discussion. Hello, Chris. Chris
Hi, everyone. Hello.
Chris was part of had a great discussion with Cinderella Liberty and offered some great insights into the music for Star Wars as well. So great to have Chris here. Chris, we're talking about some things that we do to celebrate John Williams' birthday. I talked about a film festival that I do. Brian talked about his massive CD compilation. Colin talked about a 4-day concert. Do you have anything special that you do to celebrate John Williams' birthday?
Yes, I do. In fact, it's something that I've done every year before I even knew it was John Williams' birthday, because we share a birthday, me and John Williams. So I have a birthday. That's what I do on his birthday. I have a birthday too. And I was thinking about this. Weirdly, I think, as you get older, you get less and less excited about your own birthday. And I think I get more excited that John Williams is still going strong and still producing music at his age. So, as the years have gone on, the level of excitement has just kind of transferred from my birthday to his. So I spend my birthday kind of celebrating his birthday and being very thankful that we've still got him working as well and as efficiently as he always has done.
Do you do anything special, or is it just like in addition to saying happy birthday me, it's happy birthday John?
It's a bit of a happy birthday John. Oh, and me as well. Yeah, it's just a little bit, and I always listen to some tracks and just sort of give them a wave across the pond, so yeah, try and celebrate our birthdays together.
Well, that's cool. Just as kind of a point of note, my birthday's February 11th, so I'm close to John Williams' birthday, and as you guys know, just a little bit late. And of course, as you guys know, Jerry Goldsmith is February 7th, so February is a great day. Great month for people who love film music.
Jeff, can I just give a shout out to his Happy Birthday Variations piece, which I feel like is relevant to this conversation.
Yeah.
That is the one thing I try and do, which is kind of pathetic compared to some of the other traditions that you all have been talking about. But it's a great piece, and I love how it features different sections of the orchestra kind of doing their thing, and then they all come together at the end for a big happy birthday chorus, and it kind of feels like a birthday. It feels like a bunch of friends getting together. So I just thought that was a relevant shout out for this episode.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad that was released at the time when I was doing, I did a giant 5-part John Williams special for his 80th birthday. And so they just released that. And so that's how I opened up the whole show. So thank God that was there, and it really worked out. Yeah, to jump on the kind of the question, I mean, I usually do radio shows, and I have been since 96. I don't do them as frequently, but I try to do something special. But every year, though, I know it comes down to listening, but I have a special playlist that is just all John Williams's end credits. It's about 6.5 hours long. And so that is played every John Williams birthday. And that's pretty spectacular. You really get an idea of just how good he was at crafting those kind of singular pieces of music that are definitely just pieces of music. It's not film music. It's just, hey, have a listen and enjoy. And
That is
so,
a brilliant idea. That's a fantastic idea.
it's a lot of fun.
Can I just jump in here a second? Because when Jeff was saying, how do you celebrate his birthday? It's like, I really haven't done anything special, but I actually emailed Jeff. It's like, Jeff, we need to come up with like a playlist of pieces that are either standalone great or the best of his film scores. And now I've heard from Brian and from Eric that you guys have evidently spent some effort on crafting these playlists. And I would love to celebrate his birthday by whether it's a Spotify link or shooting it in our little group email. That would be, to me, the best way to celebrate, is to have people of real discernment and enthusiasm who've taken the time to craft a playlist that we can all enjoy. So
I completely agree with that. I like that idea. And especially this end credits thing, Eric. That's pretty good. Of course, as the years have gone on, the end credits has gotten longer and longer and longer, especially with the Star Wars. You know, some I think even all the sequel trilogies are like 10 minutes long. So that's a half hour right there. Yeah, some of those end credits stuff, I mean, they're absolutely amazing. I would strongly suggest you, I don't know what's your, this is my question to you, and then maybe I have another suggestion, Eric. What's the earliest end credits music that you're playing on your list?
Yearly, I have the end cast from Bachelor Flat, 1962.
That's a good one. That's probably the first one where he was putting all of his themes into the end credits.
And it's only 32 seconds long.
Yeah, it's really quick.
I mean, because of course back then, I mean, the end credits were very, very, very short. But what's so great about this playlist, I mean, it's not specially curated in any order. It is literally play one track, hit shuffle, and then go. So I'm surprised each and every year there's always a new playlist. So I don't play it in yearly order. I don't have it in any specially curated order, except I go in and I find certain tracks on albums that aren't necessarily labeled end credits, because that's how I initially created it in iTunes. And you can just do smart playlists. But you know, Space Camp's end credits is just called Space Camp. And there's other cues on other albums that aren't necessarily labeled that way. But yeah, I can share this with you guys. I can just spit out the library as an XML and send it to you guys, and then you can have an idea of what I've chosen. But if someone wants to do a Spotify playlist, that'd be great as well.
Yeah. I've actually been working on a Spotify playlist. It's a little bit limited since not all of the Williams scores are on Spotify or iTunes, but it's pretty much like it's all the end credits and like the best stuff from his TV scores and his Olympic stuff and all that. So it's about, I want to say maybe 14 hours long. I'd have to double check the runtime, but yeah, it's pretty much everything he's ever done. And then I'm working on a separate playlist of like all like the entire film score library, which I think is about like 4 days. Like I just completed it this morning. So it's about like 4.5 days, I want to say.
I'm happy to share my John Williams at 80 9-disc set, because there's a bonus disc. because of course you're a geeky thing. And then I look forward to all of you guys going, nice collection, but why the heck did you put that selection on from that score and not this one? Are you deaf, man? But each to his own.
I read
It's like,
once
this
that
is cool, but I like this.
I read once that George Lucas got special arrangements to put the credits at the end because he wanted that splashy opening. So it's possible that actually John Williams helped to invent the end credit suite because
Yeah, and I think you are right. Yeah, I think there was an issue, especially with the Directors Guild, with him putting the. I think he left the No, did he leave the Directors Guild, or was that because he didn't get Spielberg on Jedi? I know something happened.
He did leave because of the Irving Kershner.
That's it.
Right, yeah.
They didn't say anything about when he didn't put his name at the front of Star Wars, but as soon as Irving Kershner, his name wasn't at the front, then the Directors Guild served him notice, and he says, well, in which case I'll walk away. He's got a distrust of unions and guilds anyway, and you see that in the films, but also he's a maverick through and through, and he doesn't like to be told what to do. So it was because of Empire that happened.
And for those out there listening who are unsure, the Directors Guild says the last credit before a movie begins is supposed to be the director. So even though it doesn't seem a big deal for us in Hollywood, it was quite a shock when the director was the first credit you saw at the end title, and there were no credits at the start of the film. So and George Lucas kind of gave them the big middle finger.
Why am I remembering that Apocalypse Now was like a big deal because it was the first film to not have, or I remembered it being a film that was slightly before Star Wars that had no beginning credits and rolled all its credits at the end. I may be misremembering.
I think you're correct. Yep, you're right.
Apocalypse Now was after Star Wars, but yeah.
It was after Star Wars, but before.
It was only like 78, right?
Yeah, I was
I believe.
But Coppola and Lucas are buddies, so if one's going to piss the guild off, the other guy's going to do it as well because they're so wealthy and popular. What can the guild do? Fire us? Go ahead.
Yeah.
Did John Williams invent the end credit suite? That's my investigation prompt.
I think so. I really do. I can't recall anything longer. I mean, he did have a separate piece for Jaws, but again, it was just usually the end cast and maybe a tiny bit of the crew, but nothing as lengthy as Star Wars
Right.
was. And then he would go on and you're right, he would revolutionize, or you're right, if it basically invent the reprisal of themes in the end credits, and we all know what Empire sounds like, and Raiders and Temple of Doom and Turn of the Jedi and all those great end credit suites, but I would think that he was the one that kind of started that trend.
And another impact of the Star Wars end credit suite is they changed the musical ending of Close Encounters in response to it. It was originally just supposed to be that lovely rendition of When You Wish Upon a Star, and after the success of Star Wars, a couple of months later, the producers Phillips and co were like, no, we need a John Williams suite, so they actually edited one together to give you that glorious end title, because even at that point, audiences would not go to a John Williams scored movie without that glorious end title like in Star Wars.
Probably true. All right,
just
let's
go with that, Jeff, to your original question just quickly. I mean, recently I've been taken to not just listen to a John Williams concert around his birthday, but watching a favorite film, but without watching it, just listening to it. Just put my headphones on and just listen to the soundtrack, the full 2 hours or 2.5 hours, and just listen out for the music. Sure, it's got the dialogue and everything else on it, but without watching the film, you do tend to have a slightly different appreciation for the music when it comes in and when it doesn't. And when you got options like on The Last Jedi, where they actually release a music-only track, that's even better. So you can isolate the music. Unfortunately, there aren't that many films where they do that with, but wherever they do, then it's well worth doing. And that's what I've been doing recently.
Yeah, Superman is one of my favorite music-only DVDs. I actually put that in a lot when I'm like doing chores around the house. I'll just put in the music-only track, and obviously the opening credits is great, and then they do the Phantom Zone music and all that, and then it goes away for like 5 minutes or so, and I'm kind of like, it's quiet in this house. And then all of a sudden, the destruction of Krypton. So it's like really kind of interesting how it's like, boom, this next music. And it really does make you appreciate when it comes back, because it goes away for 5-10 minutes or so.
I'm currently listening to it's Goldsmith, but it's the Alien Blu-ray that's got both isolated scores, the theatrical one and the original one, and it's amazing. I mean, obviously they're so totally different because Ridley Scott threw most of it out, but they're absolutely fascinating listening to both those scores. And again, just watching them just with the picture there, but with no sound, it's absolutely brilliant. What a genius.
Felix and Victor, I want to give you guys a chance to contribute anything about what you might do. Victor, go ahead.
Because I was thinking about your question, and I don't think I have a ritual, but it turns out it also starts as a birthday story, because turns out my young sister's birthday is the same day as John Williams. So the day I realized that, I was actually super happy, because thanks to that, I got an opportunity to celebrate John Williams' birthday with my family without them to know it, because they're not really fans. I mean, they like it when it shows up. When it appears, but they're not really fans. And so this gave me the opportunity to celebrate, with toasting and having a piece of cake and partying. So I was happy when I realized that. But something maybe I did some time when I wanted to celebrate his birthdays, I decided to send him a letter. It took me a while, actually several months or years maybe, to decide and to do it. And finally I did it. I wrote a big letter, and because I didn't want to ask anything from him. I just wanted to, as many of you already said, but just to thank him and tell him how much he means to me, and how he inspired me to become a composer myself, to write for film music and as a professional. And I just wanted him to know. But I also wanted, alongside the letter, to send him a piece, to write like a big orchestral piece and just send it to him, and see what happens. And I dedicated the piece to him and sent the whole thing. But unfortunately, they both came back to me, because apparently I wasn't able to send him unsolicited material. So they came back, and so of course I was disappointed. But several years later, I tried again, and I sent another letter, and it came back again, but this time with a nice note from one of his agents, thanking me for his kind words, and for my kind words, and for my love for John Williams. So I might try again. I have to try again soon, because it has to happen at some point. But
oh my gosh, you have to. You can't let this die.
Yeah, but this time I won't write a piece and then piece with it without a score, because apparently this is the tricky thing in the unsolicited material. So just a letter, no score, maybe this time.
Yeah. Felix, how about you?
Actually, I had a similar experience when I sent him something. It also came back because it was unsolicited material, but he kept the letter. So I sent it to his private address, and it came back from Boston.
Same, exactly the same.
Yeah,
exactly
it was the same. Yeah. Maybe
from Boston. I was like, okay.
Boston or something, because otherwise his agent maybe would have done it. It was but from Boston. But they kept the letter, and I got back the music. And I can play you later the music. It's just 30 seconds, because I combined Star Wars and Happy Birthday. Actually, it was for his I think 75th birthday, and later I sent it again. But actually, I don't do something really special on the day. I'm in Munich now, so I just it happened to be I was in Olympic Center where the movie Munich was playing. They didn't shoot there; they rebuilt it. But I walk there like every week because I go to sports there. And there is this center where the athletes and the terrorists went in this house in the beginning of the movie. And it looks like the movie, of course. They rebuild it. And if you've listened to the podcast with Tintin, I told also the story where I drew a picture for John Williams. And I have it here. I can show you. You can recognize him. It's here. And it was in 2002. So I drew the trees because he loves trees. And I drew his last compositions. Maybe you can recognize here is the last of Patriot. Then there's AI, A and I in the trees. Star Wars, Harry Potter is there with Hedwig, of course. Minority Report, he was actually writing 2002. There's a little spider, the spiders from Minority Report.
Yeah.
True Crime Forever. And he has here his, notes, his music. And I made him a little fat. Maybe that's the reason I didn't get to him. But it's a caricature, so...
That Cora, is that like a Duel of the Fates reference, or is this like a?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, because I love the parallels, because I was reading up on the Duel of the Fates music because I love that piece, and I found out that the lyrics was actually translated into Sanskrit from a Celtic poem called Battle of the Trees, and so I think that was a very nice parallel.
Yeah. And then I gave, if you listen to it, I gave it to him, and maybe it's somewhere in his cellar room. And then I arranged Star Wars and Happy Birthday. So I hope you can hear it from here, and also for the trombonists from you. The beginning of Star Wars, the trombones do a little like chaotic beginning. And in this, I heard a little bit, I just had to change one note, and it sounds a little bit like the beginning of Happy Birthday. And at the end also, I put Happy Birthday in the timpani. Maybe you can hear it. So here it is.
That's pretty good.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Great.
That is really good.
Yeah, I going right to the Happy Birthday. Mine went to go right to Star Wars, but it went to Happy Birthday. That was just, but it felt like it was right on the same path. That was amazing, absolutely amazing. That's really cool. Thanks for sharing that, Felix. That was fun. All right, I think we all have some pretty amazing ways of celebrating his birthday, and it's good to just do something different, because this is, we all agree he's the greatest out there, and every year he's alive is a gift to us. Even if he doesn't produce any new music for us, it's we can always celebrate what he has given us and continue to look forward to what he's going to. So we've talked about some things that we like to listen to and we like to share, and I'm still amazed at some of the things you guys put together. And something that's really interesting to me is every time around John Williams' birthday, you guys look on Twitter, you look on like the John Williams fan page, and everybody puts all these happy birthday wishes out, and there's always a little trickle of people out there in social media who's like, who is this John Williams guy? And it's interesting to see all the explanations that people give, and they list all the scores he's done and all that. And of course, it's always the big ones. It's always Star Wars and Harry Potter and Jaws and all that. And it got me thinking about something, and I'm going to present a little challenge to some of you, maybe not all of you, for interest of time. But if you were to if someone came to you and said, who is this John Williams person? And could you play a little bit of his music that would kind of help me understand who he is? What would you play for him? Now, here's the challenge. you can't play anything that comes from a franchise like Star Wars or Harry Potter, Indiana Jones. That includes Jaws. And you can't mention a score that has won an Oscar. So that also takes out E.T. and Schindler's List. So I'm going to give you guys a chance to think about this. And while I do that, all right, so take a listen to this. And after it plays, it's only about 10 seconds. So just let me know if you know where this comes from.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, so you all knew that right away. Yep, it's from the
That
Cowboys.
was first introduced to me
Cowboys.
on the By Request album. That was one of the very first John Williams albums I ever had back in high school. And I had never heard it before. I'm like, what the heck is Cowboy? Why is it 9 minutes long? And it blew my mind. Absolutely blew my mind. And of course, that's a precursor to his Smallville music. That really kind of longing Americana theme that's in there to his Smallville music that he presented in Superman. So,
yep, very true.
Great score.
Yeah. So Eric,
Yeah,
you had
that-
actually asked me this question in our last roundtable of what were my favorite episodes to do. And when we were done, I was like, oh, I should have mentioned the Cowboys, because that's actually one of my favorite episodes that I did, because that Boston Pops concert that I went to in 2004, he played a suite from the Cowboys. And I said, oh, I got to check out this film because it was a great suite, great music. And I didn't know who Eric Copeland was, but I knew that sound. And I was like, okay, I got to figure out who this John Williams, what this John Williams score is. And I never got around to it until I did the podcast. And the minute that main title music played, I was in love with the score. It was amazing. And it's now one of my top 10 scores, just after one listen, it just jumped right in. And so if anyone were to come to me and say, okay, give me a John Williams score or film, that would be it. It would be the Cowboys, because I think you can't help but fall in love with it. And the movie's great too. All right. So anybody want to share a score that they would give to anybody? Sadiq, looks like you got.
Yeah, I think for me, it has to be Hook.
I think everybody's saying that. I could tell everybody wants to.
Hook is just such a fantastic score, much better than the film. And I don't think the film's bad. It's just that the score is way above there. I mean, it's the songs, it's the amateur nature of the songs because of the needs of the script and the story. But it's the themes, and it's a precursor, I believe, to the Harry Potter music. I mean, all the Harry Potter series, it's got that feel to it, but really he did it first in Hook. In fact, that's even prior to, I believe, Home Alone as well. So they all have a similarity, but it was Hook that started that. And it's a wonderful score. Out of all the soundtracks that I've got, Hook is the one that I listen to the most, as long as it's not a Star Wars or an Indiana Jones one. That is the one that I listen to the most. So for me, I would play a couple of selections from Hook. But if I can just go back to Cowboys, the very first and only bootleg vinyl album I ever bought was in 1980. There used to be a shop in London. Those of you from the UK might know there used to be a shop in central London called 58 Dean Street Records. It was right round the corner from Leicester Square, where all the film premieres used to be. And the one time I was down there for a premiere, I went and bought the Cowboys on vinyl, which I've still got upstairs in the bedroom. And back in 1980, that was £10. So £10 was a lot of money back in 1980. And it was very good quality for a bootleg. It wasn't a cheap knockoff issue, but it wasn't available officially at that time. But I bought that, and that was, I loved the Cowboys because I've always been a John Wayne fan. And I had seen that film without realizing that John Williams had done the music, because it would have been just prior to me seeing Star Wars. So I love the Cowboys as well.
I got that album in Calgary for $12 Canadian. I beat you, Sadiq.
Oh, that's fun. Chris, if you wanted to share.
Yeah, so I would go for one particular track, just in terms of how John Williams's music can make you feel. You don't have to have the picture. And it would be Abandoned in the Woods from AI.
That is a good one.
Just as a demonstration of how to create tension and just keep upping the tension. And then you got that huge piano explosion that I know, me and Jeff have spoken about before. Just one of his finest moments of his musical life, I think, just that huge piano crash. And and I just think out of everything in that score, that's the moment that you could just take away from the film and say, listen to this, how does this make you feel? And it might not be anything about kids and woods and anything, but you just know it's something huge. You know the stakes are high. And prickles on the back of my neck, even just thinking about that moment. Love it, absolutely love it. That was my choice.
And also the For Always, like that motif is just like, it's so sweepingly beautiful. It's like you just want to like sit there and just, it's just amazing.
Yeah. And David's theme as well, the piano David's theme, which isn't on that original soundtrack. And thank goodness for that 3 CD release that came out a few years ago. That is one of my most played Williams albums.
I love that. I wouldn't have expected to hear that one today. Yeah. Now I'm gonna listen to. I guess it's Abandoned in the Woods. If you have the original release, it would be Rouge City. That's where it appears. Those pianos. That piano. Woo! It's amazing. I remember in the theater, was just blown away by it. It's like, actually, I remember not just the scene where where David and Jude Law's character, I can't remember his name right now, Gigolo Joe, where they approached Professor Hobby's office with the lions weeping and everything. That swell of the orchestra and everything. I was thinking with that piano hit where David gets left in the woods, I said, this is before Harry Potter came out. I said, this is going to win him an Oscar. Just that moment. I really thought so, because it was just one of those great moments of John Williams that is quintessential John Williams that really underscores the tension and the emotion of it. Of course, he didn't win the Oscar, but I still think that's my favorite moment from the score. All right, moving on. Anybody else have a score they want to contribute? Let's see, Victor.
I'll let Brian go first.
Brian or Victor? Victor, you're good. Go ahead.
I was the same as Siddiq. I was definitely going for Hook, and but I was hesitating between this one, which would be my favorite too, and another one because which is closer to us. I wanted to think about a score that would be recent, and I think I would go for the BFG because I remember like playing it over and over, and I just to show how alive and how clever and how brilliant German still is today, and because in the orchestration, in the colors, in the life that you have, even some parts are comedic. And I remember like when I played the CD the first time, there's this track called Dream Jar, I think, where it's only flutes playing like frantic notes, and I remember laughing on my sofa, listening, just laughing. And there's also this track which is that plays the music that plays when the giant is bullied by the other giants, and this is very comedic and fun, and also so for all these reasons, I think I would like people to know this score more, also because I love the themes. They're not the best, probably not the best themes he ever composed, but just for the life and the richness you can find in this score, probably.
Very good, very good. Brian, you're next.
Well, it was a bit of a challenge, Jeff, because when I first started to read your email, it was the score. I was like, Temple of Doom, but then Can't Be a Franchise or Oscar. So I really had to think, and I settled on the, I think, an unsung classic from his golden age. And as I've discussed, I consider Williams' golden age between Star Wars and Temple of Doom. It kind of gave us that Williams sound. I don't have the musical vocabulary to describe it. I'm sure those with it would. You hear that sound prior to Star Wars in Jane Eyre, The Cowboys, and his orchestrations for Fiddler on the Roof. And post Temple of Doom, you hear it in spades in Witches of Eastwick and Home Alone. The other scores have a bit different sound. But in the midst of it, in 1979, after Superman, he scored 2 scores, Dracula and 1941, where, interestingly enough, they have an element of that grand romantic sound, I guess, but they kind of shoot back to more the sound of the early 70s. And I think an unsung classic is his score to Dracula.
I was actually going to say that one. I have that CD. It was, I got it like right after Halloween. It's so good.
Yes, and I think, and maybe Andrew can chat a bit about it as well, but what I like about it is for somebody new to Williams, it has his romantic sound, but it also has really interesting orchestrations. And if you're just going to play a couple of cues for one of his scherzos, you have the chase to Scarborough, but you have to have this addition because the film version has out of nowhere this organ doing certain hits.
Yes, I love that.
Make the cue, and I think this is one of his greatest, most beautiful end titles. Like, I could listen to that end title, and if you're not familiar with it, you'll give yourself a treat. The end title to Dracula is sublime.
Yeah, I'm sure Eric knows the end title very well. It comes up in his birthday celebration.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I agree. It's a classic.
All right, Andrew, you could discuss Dracula more, or maybe I guess you have to pick another one.
Okay. Well, yeah, I was going to say like the main title from Dracula is just like has a lot of callbacks, like, you know, a lot of the great sweeping melodies of the 40s films and all that. But since nobody else has said it, I'm going to go with Heart Beeps, which not a lot of people know, honestly, like from my personal experience. It's like right in between Raiders and E.T. So it's like a little bit off the radar. But just because it's not quite conventional as the other scores you might hear with a lot of the sweeping orchestra. It's got a lot more synth in it, and just the way he experiments with all those kind of like, you know, 80s and like synth sweeping sci-fi like instruments. It's just like I just the way he pulls it off is just amazing. It's like he's like born with this knowledge. It's just like, okay, just let me write this and done. It's just amazing.
Yeah, it's absolutely. I like that score very much because it's one of those movies that he could have looked at and he could have said no. But I mentioned in the podcast episode that the executive producer he had worked with before, so he kind of felt, okay, I'll do it for you. And he watched this film and he could have just kind of said, I'll just kind of just tinkle up some notes because this was the year of Raiders of the Lost Ark and that was his bigger film. But he turned out something that's just really quite fantastic in the way he not just composed the notes, but the way he used electronic music and the way he used the orchestra to kind of blend and weave together. That's a good choice, Andrew. Very, very good.
I especially like his Crime Buster theme is like the really standout moment in the score. It's really, really good.
Yeah. I think if an album had come out of this, more people would love this score because it was just so dramatically different from what he was doing at the period. I think if that mythological album had come out, more people would be aware and I think hold this score in higher esteem just because it would have been something so different at the time. The Raiders Empire era just would have really, I think, amazed people at versatility.
Yeah, it's a shame it didn't come out till many years later. An underappreciated gem, as it were. All right, anybody else? Give you one more person a chance to share something. Jim, hand up. Go ahead.
So you guys mentioned, I was looking through the ones that I would choose, and you've said all of the ones I would say except for one. You said Hook, Witches of Eastwick, 1941, but the one that I really enjoy, I mean, actually maybe not even enjoy, is just feel, absorb, is JFK. I mean, you have so many great elements in one score. Of you have that wonderful trumpet solo theme, the heroic theme, and then you have the plaza, with the sort of horror going on underneath with the drum. And then the standout moment for me is the Arlington cue from JFK with the horn solo that starts and then the strings that come in. I mean, in my spheres, obviously musicians, orchestral musicians, we're all familiar with the big hit scores, but like I always enjoy kind of dropping the in the middle of Arlington for people and playing it for musicians that don't know it. And they're like, what is this? Is this like a Schoenberg string piece or something like that? I was like, no, this is John Williams. And they're like, no, it isn't. And I just love the harmonic language he uses in that whole score. But I also, if you mentioned scores that you would mention, but I think it would be also worth mentioning that all his Olympics music has such a incredible iconic flavor, that people know, but they don't necessarily know that that's John Williams. And if I can tie the birthday thing, my first season in the Utah Symphony was the year that the Winter Olympics were in Salt Lake City. That was 2002, which was John's 70th birthday. Was the day of the opening let's listen to me, opening titles, the opening ceremony. And the orchestra was extremely, kind of up in energy, knowing that like millions of eyes are on us with the television cameras and everything like that. And John gets in front of the orchestra to start the new piece that he'd written, and almost as if he knew how much tension there was in the room, he says, "Well, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you all for getting such a huge party together for my 70th birthday." And then he started conducting. It was great. So.
Fantastic.
I don't know if you mind. I'm going to piggyback on Jim's answer because I'm going to pick a piece from that same album. I was going to pick "Celebrate Discovery" because I think that's one of his best standalone pieces of music. Very short, but just a great fanfare for. I'm not sure they were celebrating Christopher Columbus's discovery of America. I'm not sure when it was written, but there's an even better piece on there, which I think best represents the question, which is if you're trying to introduce somebody to John Williams and John Williams' style and what he's all about, everything I think that John Williams has composed, like his Americana music, scherzos, some really deep, dark music, fanfares, the excitement of the chase, adventurism. It's all in An American Journey, which was that documentary that Steven Spielberg put together on New Year's Eve in 1999. It's 24 minutes long, but I think if you could sit somebody down and say, this is John Williams without showcasing Star Wars, Indiana Jones, or Jaws, I think they'd get an idea perfectly from start to finish as to what John Williams is all about in that single piece.
Jim and Eric just gave you the playlist of my 9th bonus disc.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, that's great. Gosh, I love American Journey. Civil rights and the women's movement is my favorite part of that.
So good.
I just good. Every time I listen to it, it's like, I wish he had saved that for a film score.
It's like nothing he'd ever written before or since, I think. It's just that whole piano movement, the way it works itself up it's so good. I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. It's an incredible piece. Yeah. I'm going to listen to it after we're done here.
Yeah,
that's
everybody's going to listen to American Journey.
Yeah, I still haven't had a chance to listen to American Journey yet. As like there's like a lot of John Williams that I listen to on a daily basis, but there's also a lot that I just haven't had the chance to experience yet. So I'm definitely gonna check that out.
Well, that disc was a godsend, by the way, because there was a whole bunch of concert work that was never released, and so "Celebrate Discovery" was one of my favorite pieces that I would hear a really bad recording on. I think it was Jeff Eldridge's John Williams site, recorded from God knows when. So when I heard they were doing this with all of his other concert works, I was like, this is fantastic. And it lived up to the hype. It's a great album.
Yeah. Andrew, I think this is something you need to do for his birthday. Listen to all the stuff you haven't heard.
Oh yeah.
American
Definitely.
Journey.
Great idea.
Definitely. We'll talk to you in 3 years when you're finished. Looking forward to your notes.
It's just like 10 years later. Nope, still haven't listened to everything yet. What?
It's a good idea for a podcast. You should do that. You start listening to all the new stuff and then talk about it.
Yeah,
hey, you're right.
There you go.
The Baton 2, the prequel to the Baton.
Yes.
Prequel, sequel podcast.
Yeah.
Start with Essay for Strings.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
All right. So I want to close out with something that you guys don't know this is coming, but I get a lot of emails from a lot of people talking about the podcast and what they've heard, and I'm we're a month out of me finishing it, and I'm still getting emails from people, and that's really wonderful. I got an email just a few weeks ago that actually kind of brought tears to my eyes. It was really emotional and very unexpectedly emotional. All of you probably know who Tommy Tedesco was. He was John Williams' probably his go-to guitarist for many years. He did I believe Sugarland Express. I know he definitely did the guitar for The River and for Conrack. And I got an email from his son, Denny, who had said he had just discovered the podcast and was listening to a couple episodes. He specifically listened to the ones that have featured his dad's music. And he was very appreciative of me mentioning his dad, especially on The River. And that prompted him to leave the following email. I'm going to read you pretty much the entire email that he left for me. So here we go. My father and John went back many years in the 1950s when they were gigging jazz guys. So Dad always got called when there was hard reading and or pretty acoustic Latin guitar. When you talked about the recording session of The River that was in August 1984, it brought chills to me. At the time, I had just been diagnosed with cancer. This is Denny talking. I was 24, healthy, when suddenly I'm in surgery the day before that session. I'll never forget my father coming to the hospital that day in tears. He told me what went down that day. When they got to the cue growing up, my father broke down in tears. Here he is, a guy that looks like a truck driver that's supposed to read and play this gorgeous piece, but the title killed him. All he could do was think of his child in the hospital. He had to ask to take 5 and then came back and played it. I don't think anyone knew what was going on. I'll never forget those tears and emotion. So that score, as well as Conrack, are very special to me. Some of my dad's best work with John. So yeah, I got that email. I had to basically stop what I was doing for like 5 minutes and collect myself. And then I actually went in and I went to The River soundtrack and I listened to the Growing Up cue. It really is more emotional now than it was, because I always like that cue, especially when you play it with the film. But adding to that now was really good. So I've already thanked Denny, but thanking him publicly for sharing that that little tidbit about his dad, Tommy, who actually also died of cancer. Denny is still around. He is a director and producer. He made a wonderful documentary that I started watching called The Wrecking Crew. It's talking about all these session players that played for all these great singers and musicians back in the 70s, I believe. I believe it's on Amazon Prime, so you guys should check it out. It's really good. So I wanted to share that with you guys. I know we're always kind of excited to hear a little bit of inside stuff about any recording sessions or anything about John Williams, but to hear this about one of his favorite collaborators was absolutely wonderful.
Jeff,
guys?
talking about the documentary, and I'll definitely check that out, is that why has there not been a detailed, in-depth, fly-on-the-wall documentary made about John, about his process and his method, and as a resource for scholars in the future, as well as us fans? Because if you went back to the era of Mozart or the classical composers, and somebody could have done a documentary to document how this person came up with all this wonderful music that we still enjoy hundreds of years later, well, how wonderful that would be. We've still got the opportunity to do it. Somebody needs to do it, and they need to do it quickly.
Yeah, I agree with you. Everybody on here would agree with you 100%. There needs to be a documentary about John Williams. I think all the special edition, like featurettes, are probably as close as we're ever going to get to him talking about his process. Eduardo, if I'm not mistaken, I think you knew somebody or you were part of some crew that was planning to do a documentary or something about John Williams.
Some friends and I are working on a documentary about Bernard Herrmann, and we had reached out to Williams a few times to participate. But if I remember correctly, there was someone on Twitter who actually started an account who is trying to do a doc about Williams specifically. I don't know how involved he would be. Just due to now sort of in this like COVID world, you know, who knows what his involvement, if any, would be. But I don't know. I actually get the impression that he doesn't really want to participate in any of that stuff. I think he's just so absorbed in his day-to-day process of, you know, kind of working on whatever it is that he's working on that, you know, to But I sort of like that idea, like, just sort of like a fly on the wall, camera crew or something while he's composing or working on something would be fascinating to see, because as you mentioned, Sadiq, the process of like composers like Mozart and Beethoven is pretty well documented of what their day-to-day was like, and that would be absolutely fascinating to see what Williams's day-to-day sort of would be in that the process when he's actually like kind of down to it at the piano and actually doing the parts of the work that require erasing and playing stuff over and actual the hard composition, because there's an endless amount of B-roll of him conducting at concerts, at scoring sessions, things like that.
John's too humble, isn't he? And he really doesn't do himself any service. He does himself a disservice, because he is a great composer and a great conductor and a great advocate for orchestral music, and he loves musicians. What better gift could he give? A legacy would be a fly-on-the-wall documentary about what he's contributed. He may not like it because he's obviously shy about it, but it would be a huge gift to the world, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was thinking what I would love to see is, how they like they did with The Last Jedi, they have like the score only where you can just like watch the film. What if we had like one of those, like just like take any film, but instead of like watching the actual film, it's all the recording sessions that were going on taking place. So you had like, you could see John Williams conducting, all the orchestra playing all those cues in order. I think that would be a pretty awesome thing to pull off.
That's probably about the only one you'd get. I don't think with Mr. Williams' personality, he would be interested in having a crew around him. But there's lots of footage of him with Spielberg specials and Star Wars specials and special editions. You could probably, Sadiq, wind up with something pretty close to what you want just by somebody getting together and editing together all the special features and interviews and such he's done over the years. Because I think you get little snippets, and that would be a crowdsource or crowdfunding. Let's start it now, and we can do it.
I've seen all those, but it just makes me want to have more.
Well, just think about like Steven Spielberg. I think has a camera recording Williams's sessions for everything. So just think about how much there is. I think it's just John Williams is a very private person, and I don't know whether you're going to get the. It's tough to say, but like the real John Williams, and I think the real John Williams is him talking with his friends or other musicians. So I think there's a great David Raxon, conversation with John Williams in the 80s, and the two of them are just kind of like just shooting the shit. Sorry for the language, but that's basically what they were doing, right? And Williams is very relaxed. Oh, sorry, Previn, that's it. I get Previn and Raxon mixed up. Yeah, and it's a great documentary. They're just sitting there, and Williams is really just kind of letting it out, real honesty, none of this kind of like humble stuff, which I think is great, but it's just, I don't know whether you're going to get the real John Williams at 90 that you would back then, especially talking to his colleagues. But I think what would be great, and I forgot who mentioned it, but I mean, just trying to grab as much of all of that as possible, and then talking with his colleagues, people that worked very close with him, Pope, Ross, the musicians, whomever. And then you can meld that all together and produce something that I think would be the best product to tell us exactly who John Williams is and how he writes and what the process is. And I think that's the best you could probably do now. I mean, the only other person I could think would do it would be Laurent Bourgeau, who does all the documentaries for Spielberg. And I mean, I'm thinking about all of the interviews that they've done for Spielberg films, and I'm sure there's a whole bunch of stuff we haven't heard before from that as well. So
now what we need to do is we need to dress up in like those like hazmat suits that you see in the government ET. We need to dress up like one of those guys. Just all of us show up at Steven Spielberg's house and just like, give me your camera.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, the Spielberg home movies I think would make a fantastic look into that process.
That would be great.
We hardly see. I think it would be great. Yeah. He's got those, and maybe one of these days, Spielberg, whether it's while he's alive or after he's gone, those recordings, those home movies will be in a museum somewhere, archived for the public to see. Because I think it's something that, we've seen snippets and we've seen some things. I remember oh gosh, was it Saving Private Ryan, where he talked about where there was a nice little 5-minute piece, little home movie of them talking about just changing the ending music in the cemetery. It was all about changing 1 minute of music, and it was like almost 5 minutes that you just hear this process of these two guys talking together.
Right.
We never get that kind of thing, and it would be great to hear. But we all just have to do the best we can. I know, Eric, you're doing some good stuff, and Maurizio Caschetto is doing some great things. The legacy of John Williams, talking with a lot of musicians to get that kind of insight. So we just have to use what we can, because as you guys know, I started my podcast because there wasn't a biography of John Williams, and I hope I did the best I could with stringing together something that would help us with that. But there are a lot of composers out there that never got that kind of thing, and I think it may be because it's they think it's not going to sell, it's not going to get an audience. But with John Williams, it would. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't get any more rock star than him.
I mean, that's exactly what people thought when they wanted to release the soundtrack for Star Wars back in like late 77. It's like, this isn't gonna make any business, and but eventually there were a person who was like, okay, well we'll put like one album out, and then they did, and it just sold like that, and it was like, okay, we just need to do this more often.
Yeah, hopefully something comes of it. Whether John was alive or whether he participates in it at all. I've seen some great documentaries where they talk about people when they're dead, or even when they're alive, and they never talk to the person. So you just get a lot of great insight from that.
Unfortunately, I think we'll get that from Steven Spielberg, but only after our hero passes.
Yeah, unfortunately.
That's going to be a really dark day. I can promise you that.
Let's not talk about that. Let's celebrate his 89th birthday. It is. We're going to continue. We're going to be hopeful that he's around to celebrate 90. Hopefully something comes out of 90. Brian, you won't have to get butt-kissed for a 90th birthday celebration. Something will come of it, I hope.
If so, I got more discs planned.
Oh yeah.
Awesome. That is fantastic. Guys, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a lot of fun celebrating John Williams' birthday and celebrating his music with all of you. I couldn't think of a group of people who I would want to do it with more. So thanks very much. And thank you all of you for joining us. And as I always say, the baton is down.